Sounds good.
It's official now. It's being recorded.
We'll stop talking about what we were talking about.
Yeah, no more inappropriate talking.
Don't tell anyone.
No. All right. Well, thanks everyone for coming. This is a really exciting webinar because we're joined by two really amazing people, Denise Moorehead and Susanne. Is it Intraligator?
It is, just like it looks, Intraligator.
Intraligator, who are part of and work for UU Class Conversations. And we're going to hear from them in a little bit, but I'll introduce myself first. My name is Sean Neil Barron. I'm currently the ministerial intern with the New England region of our Unitarian Universalist Association, which is not only a mouthful, but is hard to say because I have allergies right now. So you're going to have to deal with my a little bit nasally voice at this moment. So it's great to have you all here. I'm going to let Denise and Susanne introduce themselves, where they're coming from. After that, I'm going to just do a little bit basic Faithify 101, so we can kind of get on the same page with what this awesome tool provides for our movement. And then I'm going to turn it over to our guests, and they're going to go through a really, really thought out and detailed kind of exploration of how to activate your networks and get your message out so that your Faithify campaign can be a success. So I'm really excited about that. So Denise and Susanne, why don't you introduce yourselves?
I'm Denise Moorehead. I am with UU Class Conversations. I'm actually one of the co-founders, along with Reverend Dorothy Emerson, and a person who came in a little bit later to the group is Betsy Leander Wright, who is the program director at Class Action. So we started this a couple of years ago, and are really excited about the reception by our faith community, and looking forward to just continuing to build and help people to explore class and to address classism and to eradicate classism, hopefully within our own faith group and beyond, certainly.
Great. Okay. I'm Susanne Intraligator. I trained as a journalist originally, and then I went to Harvard Divinity School and trained as a UU minister. Shortly after that, my husband got a professor job here in Wales, which is where I'm calling you from tonight. And so I'm not working leading a congregation. I'm finishing a PhD in digital media. And last year, I got to work remotely for the UUA as their online strategist, which was really fun. And then after that, I've been sort of kind of consulting with some UU media groups and helping them tell their stories better. And so the Class Conversations hired me. So I wasn't familiar with them until they sort of asked me to help them with their Faithify bid. So Denise is going to tell most of the story, and I'll just sort of pipe in at the end with the little bit that I did.
And if I can just follow up, I want to be really clear with folks, because I know not everybody has money to hire someone, but Susanne is very kind in saying that we hired her, because she basically did this for free. I mean, we had a very, very small stipend that we offered her because we knew that she was just amazingly talented and wanted to work with her. But she's being very kind. I mean, when she says we hired her, it really was a very kind of heightened volunteerism, I guess we'd call it. So,
but I got to put it on my resume.
Wonderful. And we have Michelle Walsh joining us. We're just jumping in here. So just a little bit of orientation towards Fuse. There's a chat box that you can type questions or thoughts in, which if you go to the bottom right-hand side of your screen, it looks like a little comic bubble. You click that, you'll be able to see the chat. In your video screen and on the bottom left of Fuse, there is a microphone. If you click that, it will mute your microphone so that we don't hear any background noise in your area. And it's best to have those muted if you're not going to be speaking. And then you can just unmute when you're ready to speak. And feel free to kind of ask questions in the chat box. We'll be able to get to them either during the presentation or kind of after in the question period. And with that, I'm going to, all right, Michelle is updating us on how she got here. All right, so I'm going to jump into our Faithify 101. So Faithify is crowdfunding. But before we kind of get to what crowdfunding is, I just want to kind of pause and talk about the name. So before Faithify was Faithify, it had a different name. And Sue Phillips, one of the major players in getting Faithify from idea to reality, has forbidden me from telling you what that name is, but it was really bad. And we really struggled to find a name that seemed Unitarian Universalist, but also kind of active. And Faithify was born. And the thing that I really love about Faithify is not only is it a religious word, we're talking about making our faith more manifest in the world, but it's also a very active word. This is something where we join together in our faith, and I think that's a really beautiful thing. And so we launched GA last year, so we're almost at our 1-year anniversary. And in that year, we've done some pretty remarkable things. So the basics of crowdfunding. So crowdfunding is pretty simple. Someone has an idea. They take that idea to a crowd, a group of people, their network, our movement. They say, we want you to fund this idea, and they make a pitch. It's not a transaction. You're not necessarily getting anything from funding the idea, but you want to be part of funding it. So the crowd votes with their dollars. They say, okay, this is an idea that I want to support, and then they make that idea able to be born in the world and bring whatever that gift is to our world, whether that's for a Unitarian Universalist congregation or whether or not it's for a community that that they're engaging in. But although it may sound like it's a lot about money, we really think that Faithify is about a lot more than funding. I think one of the biggest things that Faithify does is it exposes us to the diversity of inspiring projects and expressions of Unitarian Universalism in our world. Every time a new project gets posted on Facebook, you're exposing your vision of what Unitarian Universalism can be in the world to a whole new audience. And it's been really inspiring for me to go on and log on and see, oh my God, there's this new trip that's coming to Boston of youth. Or we're going to be funding members of Drum to go to GA. Or people who've been doing on-the-ground resistance work in Ferguson are going to be coming to GA to share their stories. I didn't know that that work was going on in Ferguson, but now I do because of Faithify. And Faithify allows us to see the exciting projects that we can get involved in. But the other thing that I think Faithify does is it exposes grant making, because usually grant making is done by a small group of people giving out a lot of money. And what Faithify does is allows, kind of busts open that barrier. Now you're basically democratizing grant making. You're asking your community to fund an idea if they think it's worthwhile. Instead of a few people getting to decide, being the gatekeepers for funding, now a whole community gets to be that gatekeeper. And we think that's not only more democratic towards our faith, but it also allows people to get involved in what they're funding. They have now an ownership and an engagement with it, which I think is much deeper than kind of the passive grant making that we used to do in the future or in the past. But I think the biggest part of Faithify is a tool to tell the story of our love as Unitarian Universalists in the world and to raise money to amplify that impact. I think every time a Faithify project gets funded, we're just amplifying our ability to stand on the side of love in a lot of different ways. I think that's a really beautiful thing. Inspiring innovation, bursting boundaries, lowering walls, spreading values, all the things that we think Faithify accomplishes. So what are the results? So since we're not at a year yet, but we've had over $225,000 pledged to Faithify projects, which is pretty astounding. So those 57 projects that have come from pretty diverse sets of places, from Honolulu to Washington, D.C., from just outside of Boston to Florida. We've had a pretty good geographic spread. And out of those projects, 71% have been successful, which is really amazing. Comparably, if you look at Kickstarter, their success rate is about 39%, and Indiegogo is about 45%. So Faithify has a pretty amazing track record. And we think that's not only because of the quality of the projects, but it's also because that this is giving Unitarian Universalists another way of living out their faith that they've really been hungering for. The average pledge is about $110. And this last statistic of 10% of projects exceed their goals, I haven't been able to look at the most recent report, but I think it's more like 20% right now, which is really exciting. So that's kind of where Faithify has been from a year. This has really been annoying to Hillary because she's trying to put in a bunch of ads for Faithify for GA, and she keeps having to change the number of pledges that we've got so far, which I think is a great problem to have. I see that we have Lisa joining us. Welcome. We're just talking about the basics of Faithify. So when you get to Faithify, this is your homepage. And if you scroll down, you're able to see projects that are posted there. And each of the project has a picture, it has a small description, and then it has this little box which shows you how it's doing in terms of how much percentage-wise it's been funded, how much money has been given, and most importantly, how many days are left in the project. This is kind of the stats bar. And when you go to a project, this is what you see. You're able to see a picture or a video that the project has uploaded. You have their stats bar, and then you have the place to fund or follow. If you follow something on Facebook, on Faithify, you get updates from them. And then also importantly, if you look at the bottom, you have an ability to share. So whether that be on Facebook, on Twitter, on Google+, or sharing the link, which is one of the important ways of getting your message out to the world. So some people ask us, like, who decides what goes up on Faithify? And we only have two criteria. You have to be able to answer to our satisfaction that your project claims Unitarian Universalism. That's our first thing. And that your project is claimed by Unitarian Universalism. So this can be a lot of different ways. We've had people that have been working on kind of an independent project as a Unitarian Universalist in relationship with Unitarian Universalist congregations. So they're Unitarian Universalists and they're working with Unitarian Universalists, check, check. We've had congregations who are Unitarian Universalist who are endorsing projects, but we've also had individuals. Recently in the past month, we've had a bunch of ordinations. So these are people who are being ordained into Unitarian Universalist ministry. So they claim it, someone is ordaining them, they're being claimed. So that's our benchmark. Your project can be an individual passion, or it can be a group of congregations coming together to fund a minister or a youth director, as they've done in Massachusetts. Whatever it is, those are our criteria. Oh, we switched over. A few more things before we get to our presenters. Faithify is all or nothing. And this is probably the most controversial part of Faithify's existence. Because every time we get a question, why don't we just allow people to fundraise and get all the money that they have that has been donated to them? And we have a couple of reasons for this. The first bit is that we think it's a bit of accountability. If you say you need $5,000 to do a project and you only raise $300 of it, how are you going to do your project? We think that as a donor, you want to know that you're being able to give to a project that is going to be successful and not to kind of give a bunch of money that isn't actually going to be useful to the person or the group that is funding the project. But we also think it creates a sense of urgency and it really rallies people behind actually funding a project. There are kind of two moments in a Faithify campaign. Oh, Michelle, there is there's a slide that we're looking at. Are you not seeing that? I assume you're not. Are other people seeing the slideshow that is being projected? Susanne, yes. Mary. Okay. So I'm not sure why you're not seeing that, Michelle. Hopefully, you might want to go and make sure. So sometimes you can just be looking at you can be just looking at the videos. And so to get out of that, if you can find this little button that looks like a square with an arrow pointing in towards the middle of the screen, if you click that, that'll probably bring you to a page where you'll be able to see the screen share. I hope that's helpful. And if that's still a problem, we'll see if we can fix it. So the other major question that we have is, what are the fees and what are the tax? Are these tax deductible? So really quickly, Faithify doesn't make any money when you post a project. Our funding comes from the Mass Bay District and from generous UU organizations, and so we don't take a cut of it. The only fees that are paid are for our payment processor, which is WePay. So every time a transaction is made, they charge you 2.9% plus 30 cents. And as I like to say, I hope that with that 30 cents, they're going to go buy a gumball, because I have no idea why that 30 cents is used. So that is with the payment processor. We don't make any of that money. And then projects are going to be tax deductible if the entity that is doing the project has tax exempt status and the project is within their tax exempt category of activities. So that's completely up to the projects to be able to provide any sort of tax deductibility. Are there any questions about the basics of Faithify? Because if not, we're going to get onto the excitement of activating your network. So I'm going to turn it over to Susanne and Denise, and I'm going to chat offline with Michelle to.
Hello.
Oh, Ralph, do you have a question?
Yeah, you said there was that you had a 71% success rate, and what were the other 2 percentages for the other crowdfunding sources that you mentioned? Do you remember that?
Kickstarter is at about 39%, and Indiegogo is about 45%.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. All right, so as I turn it over to Denise and Susanne, Michelle, I'm gonna hit you up in the chat box and we'll see what we can do.
So Denise, it looks like we should start our presentation, right? Shall I open?
I know that yes, I was just waiting for them to come up. Thank you.
Oops, it went all the way to the end. I don't know what happened. Let's go fix that. There we go.
Okay. All right. So again, I'm Denise Moorehead, and want to talk about why Faithify. Why is it that UU Class Conversations wanted to work with Faithify? And I have to say first that the Faithify staff is extremely supportive. I'm not being able to move this all of a sudden. Earlier, I could switch slides when you had when we first met, Sean. Oh, there we go. Okay, thank you.
I clicked on the arrow. You see the square at the bottom, and then
okay, initially it had been set up a little differently at the beginning. So okay, so tell me. All right. So okay, great. All right. So as I was saying, we had found the staff to be wonderfully supportive. So I just want folks to know that you've got a great group of people that you're going to be working with if you do a Faithify campaign, if you do a project. But we wanted to first just start with what is UU Class Conversations. And before we begin, we wanted to just ask you to take a moment to reflect. When did you first notice that somebody had more class advantage than your family? What made you think so? How did that make you feel? When did you first notice that someone had less class advantage than your family? What made you think so? And how did that make you feel? It just gives you a little flavor for the way we work. We provide workshops, and we'll get to that a little bit later, but the kinds of things that we do with class conversations is to, as I said earlier, help people to explore what class is. And class is the relative social rank in terms of income, wealth, status, position, and or power. And it's comprised of, as you see on the slide, economic capital, cultural capital, social capital. I think the most important thing, though, to keep in mind about class for me is that class affects you in many ways, but it's also emotional. It's also an emotional reaction that we have to our own class background. And that's the kind of thing that we are trying to do in terms of serving UUs. We want congregations and organizations to have tools and language to explore class and to address classism, and to do it very distinctly through a UU lens. As I said to you, Dorothy, Reverend Dorothy Emerson, and I had gotten together, started talking about how important it was to, as we, as a faith community, are looking at different kinds of bias. We realized that the one thing that we weren't talking very much about, oftentimes the elephant in the room, is class and classism. So we really see this as sacred work, and we do this because we want to create a more class-inclusive faith, a more welcoming faith, and we want people to be better able to bridge their differences and address issues like income inequality. I mean, one of the things that as people begin to talk about class, they begin to understand how it can be divisive and how it can bring us together, because we all bring so much to the table. You know, all of our class backgrounds give us strengths that we're able to provide to people. Just jumped. So if we look at our role, the role of UU Class Conversations, we work in coalition with other UU groups and other organizations, and we are looking to help our denomination to live our UU principles more authentically, to really embody those principles. So reducing the gap between our lived experiences and our aspirations as a denomination. We want to help to grow our membership through the diversity of class and through stronger relationships within the wider community. I mean, one of the things that's come up as we do our workshops, people have talked a lot about feeling like they have to, people have actually used the word pass. They don't want people to know that they're not upper middle class, because that's the assumption about UU. So we see our role as helping people to really understand the diversity within our own faith community. And bottom line is, we want to have a greater impact. We want, as a faith community, to have a greater impact in bringing positive social change into the world. Again, making sure that our lived experiences and our aspirations are much more closely linked. To date, we have a steering committee and advisory group. We have hundreds of supporters, and we, as I said earlier, offer exploration workshops, class exploration workshops. We help organizations and groups and congregations address classism by organizing. So we provide some organizing consultation to address classism. We have online resources, web, social media forums, and we've served, as you see, a number of folks in person through the in-person workshops and online. And as more UUs asked for our support, we realized that we needed to really to increase the kind of funding that we had. And we thought a lot about this, and we'll get that to in a moment, but we wanted to train more facilitators and regional leaders, because both Dorothy, well, actually the three of us, Dorothy and I and Betsy Leander Wright, are in Massachusetts. We do now have steering committee members, and we have other folks that we're beginning to work with as facilitators who are in other parts of the country. But it's really important, as more congregations and groups want to do this work, that we have folks who are local and can do a better job of doing the kind of follow-up consultation. So that's one of the things that we knew we needed to increase our funds to do. We wanted to bring workshops to smaller, poorer congregations. We do charge a fee for the workshops because there's a lot of time involved in putting the workshops together. I mean, going out to do the workshops. We actually charge, we figured out, I think last year we probably all made about $1.35 an hour. But I mean, we do ask for a fee to be paid to do the workshops. And we had a number of as they say, smaller congregations, groups with fewer funds that we wanted to be able to go out and work with. And really important, we wanted to expand our digital resources, because we hear from a lot of folks who are maybe not quite ready to have us come and do a workshop, or they've done workshops and they now want to continue in this work. So having digital resources, being able to provide that to folks, videos, webinars, a really important piece of this work to expand it to reach as many people as possible. So that's what we knew we needed extra funding for, and we said, we know about Faithify. Let's talk to the Faithify folks. Let's think about mounting a Faithify campaign. So we started planning, and we actually did a lot of work to decide if this was going to be good, if this is something we should be doing. So we started to kind of float the idea to our leadership, to some supporters that we had already, to people who had been in our workshops, and to other people that we knew who had actually done some crowdfunding through Faithify, and folks who had done, sometimes it jumps, I'm sorry. I'm not sure what's going on, I'm sorry. Why it's moving. It's moving on its own. Must have a little ghost in the, what they call a ghost in the machine. So we started pre-activating our network. So we talked to folks to see if they thought this was a good idea, and also to get some buy-in, because we did think a lot about, we thought it was a great idea. We wanted to make sure that other folks believed it, and to make sure that we had folks who were going to kind of buy into this campaign that we were going to mount. So the next piece was we developed a strategy, and that's something really important to do. So it's very important to pre-activate your networks and to have a strong strategy in place before you ever begin to talk to the Faithify folks, or to begin to think about going to the website to put something together. So you want to really have clarity about, and with your leadership, with your members, specific uses for additional funds. And as I say, we'd already thought about that, and that's how we got to the point of wanting to do a Faithify campaign. We thought a lot about the exact monetary goals that we had. We thought a lot also about potential donors that would help us to ensure what we call wins. So we had people who were willing to give to the campaign very early, other folks who would give at the midpoint, and people who would give later. So that would keep the momentum up as people came to Faithify and learned, came to the website, learned about it. We wanted them to see that there was constant movement. So that's something that we had planned together with some supporters. We wanted to, and you need to think about, when you're developing your strategy, how to share your benefits-oriented message. And I can't say enough, it's got to be benefits-oriented. We oftentimes think about, this is what you can do for us, but what are we doing for you? What are we doing for contributors? And what are we going to be able to offer our movement? So that's very important to think about as you move forward. That's sort of be good before you begin to, again, write anything, think about any kind of graphics, anything. So, and then we started thinking about creating our message. Why should people, related to what I just said in terms of the benefit orientation, why should people support the project? Facts are important, but people really support you because they connect at an emotional level. So it's very important to provide facts. People need to know what you're going to do with the funds that they're kindly providing, but you really want to help people to connect at a very gut level. And you really need to think about what vehicles are going to be the best ones to get your message out. Stories and photos and video and social media. We thought about, we have an email newsletter. Before we even started this, we thought about, when does our newsletter hit? Do we need to change the dates that our folks are going to receive them? And we went from there. And then learned about Susanne. We really wanted somebody who was going to help us think, as we thought about all this sort of strategizing, somebody who was really going to help us come up with some language, some graphics, a video that would resonate with our supporters and with the movement as a whole. So I will turn this over to you, Susanne.
Great. Well, I'm just wondering if now might be a good time to stop to see if there's any questions about class conversations in general, about how they prepared for Faithify, before we go into talking specifically about the pitch that we came up with. Does anyone have a question for Denise? Okay, so we can move forward then. So as I was saying before, I wasn't involved in class conversations, previous to this. but Dorothy and Denise, who are the leaders of Class Conversations, heard about me through the UUA, and so they reached out to me through email, and we talked about what we might be able to do together, and we decided that everything's listed on this slide, this would be what I could bring to them, is help them actually craft the bid itself, and on the nitty-gritty of it. And I wanted to talk a second about our process. Because I hadn't been involved in Class Conversations, I was sort of coming in the middle of things, and it took us a while to sort of understand each other and know where each was coming from. I mean, as you can imagine, class is a very sticky issue, and it's not easy for people to talk about. And it took Dorothy and Denise a lot of work and background and research to come up with a method of opening a safe space for UUs to be able to begin discussing this. So they had already been doing that for a couple of years at this point, and they had learned a lot and really honed an approach. And I was coming at it from a very different direction because I had worked in social media and journalism and storytelling, and I wanted to do something funny. I think the funny social media is the stuff that gets shared, and so I came back at her with ideas for kind of jokey ways of getting the message across, and that's why I put this picture from Monty Python in here. This is, looked up images about social class, and this is a very British version of social class here with the the upper class guy on the left, the upper class twit, and the middle class guy and the working man, and how they sort of look down on each other. But I was trying to come up with visual ways of grabbing people's attention about class, and we really struggled because Dorothy and Denise have been through this, and they know that a lot of that stuff hits people the wrong way. So we went through a lot of mistakes and getting to know each other and understand each other and sort of figure out, well, if we can't do it with humor, can we at least sort of figure out what the jargon is and see if we can unpack the language and see if we can come up with a way of talking in plain language, but also make some kind of real emotional attention-grabbing display as well. Find a way to really get at, to grab people's attention. And so that we had to work on it. It took us quite a few weeks, I think, to get to where we wanted to be. But I think, in the end, we came to a really good place. I think that was fresh and interesting and different, and a way of getting people interested in the topic. So I'm wondering if maybe we could go to the Faithify website now and we can look at the actual class conversation pitch as it ended up. Let's see. Sean, are you still around? Can you show us how to do that? I don't see Sean's face, but I see him doing what I asked. Thank you very much. I wanted to go to the actual page where it is with all the other projects. So this is the page after you clicked on Class Conversations, but can we start at the actual page where it's just one among many?
I'm getting us there now.
Thank you. Because this is where I started in my own process, thinking, well, what will make our page look, what will make our bid look good on the page? What are the basics that it needs to have to grab people's attention and tell our story in a visual way? So obviously, it needs to have what's called in Faithify language a featured image. So that's the image there where the banner that says funded is across it. That's called a featured image on Faithify's website. So we had to come up with one, and I realized working with Class Conversations, they had very few images. They're so focused on conveying their message and creating these workshops that they hadn't really stopped to think about doing things like taking photos. So I think that's a great, one of my primary messages for every UU organization is take photos of everything you do. Really develop a photo library because you'll need that in all of your social media or PR work. It took us, this photo that I came up with, a featured image here, is actually an edited image. I had to find two other people and put them together and move it around to make something that looked like a conversation. And we wanted to make it with people who are different genders, different ages, hopefully different races, to get a sense of people in conversation across difference. And it was really hard to find an image that fit there and that conveyed that. But we finally got to that there. So the image, I think, was really important, and that took us a while to come up with. And then we had to come up with a logo, and we spent hours coming up with potential ideas for a logo. I know it's pretty simple. It's just a chalice and two people talking over the chalice. But logos are a lot trickier than they look. If you guys have ever made one, you'll know how it is. And then we wanted to come up with a headline. Then we went back and forth about some kind of language. And I really wanted to focus on simple words, making it, when we talk about something like classism, it's very easy to get cerebral and polysyllabic and talk in terms of big concepts, which in themselves are classist. That kind of language and that way of talking about social structure is for college educated people, it can be in itself kind of exclusive. So I wanted to talk about getting real about privilege and access. It took us a while to get to language that I thought, it's not 50-cent words. It's really basic ways of conveying this stuff, and hopefully talking about it in a way that conveys honesty and reality. So we struggled with that, but I liked where we came up with. But I spent a lot of time thinking about this language and trying to boil it down. As a journalist, I think that's like 90% of my job, is to try to find the most interesting nugget and the most interesting direct way of saying something and try to lead with it and try to develop a way of talking about something that's engaging. So, it took effort, I thought. But I'm happy with what we came up with. Are you happy with that, Denise? Did I convey our process?
Yes.
Okay, can we go to the interior page now? Thank you, Sean. So I'm going to talk about the video in just a minute, but as you can see here, after you click on the project, that's what comes up immediately, is this large image of a video. So you can see that that's a really important part of your Faithify bid. You can choose not to do a video because, they do involve some technical skills in making them. And if you don't have it, you can just put a photo there. But I think it's a great opportunity. And I would say if you can do it or find a way to do it, please do. And I'll talk a little bit more about the specifics of the video in a minute. But if you scroll down that page, you'll see some more. And now this is actually, this is quite a bit here. I'm not exactly sure. I can't remember. We did this several months ago now, but I can't remember how many words this is. But it's something like 500 words, isn't it, Denise? It's a substantial amount of text here, is my point.
Yes, yes. But we actually did cut it back a bit because it was very, very long, and we kept cutting and cutting because that's really important too. People only want to read so much. You could lose them,
Yeah. So we tried hard to make it as brief as we could, to put in white space, to describe things in lists. I did this all actually. When I worked at the UUA, I developed a video series called Writing for the Web that is actually now on the UUA website, and it's a free resource for all UUs. And it's really about these practices of, trying to be visual, trying to put up pull quotes, trying to include a lot of white space, always have subheads, make things bold, always make your links jump out and make your links the most important. Anyway, I go through a lot of rules for writing for the web and making it as visual as possible. And that video series is available. I can send you all the link to that, but I would recommend it as a place of starting. If you're not comfortable, if you don't have a lot of experience in writing for the web and how it's different from all other kinds of writing, that's a good place to start. So that's what we tried to do here. And just one more thing about talking. Oh, I wanted to, if you could scroll down to the end. I thought one of the things that class conversations did that was really wonderful was to be really clear about the endorsements and the partners. Because one of the Faithify staff, I think it was Hillary, really guided us in making our pitch and crafting it. And I think one of her points was that some people, when they go to Faithify and evaluate a bid, they go down to the bottom immediately and look at the endorsements and ask, are people I know supporting this? Are people that I've heard of? Are people that I respect, leaders in the movement, supporting this particular cause? And so I passed that on to class conversations, and they really made an effort. And look at this fantastic group of people. It's diverse, of ages, backgrounds, all kinds of really interesting UU leaders saying interesting things about how important class conversations is. So I think that is a good opportunity as well, if you can get people on board. And I also want to say that all the work that we put into this, all the PR work for class conversations, remains really useful. All the text that we wrote, all of these endorsements, this is all stuff that class conversations can keep using. They can put it up on their website. They can use it in all their PR for years to come. So even though it seems like a lot of work, and it was a lot of work, it's not just for this bid. It's stuff that can be used over and over again and recycled and repurposed. So it's worth doing. We'll talk just a minute about the video. Would it be okay if we just watched the video to get a sense of it together? It's only 2 minutes long.
Yeah, I'm going to load the video in a second.
Oh, thanks, Sean. I should have given you a warning about that. Maybe that I wanted to do that. Or if everybody's already seen it, you probably haven't, though. One of the things that people say in social media now is that the average attention span is getting shorter and shorter. When we made this, the rule of thumb was 2 minutes or less. Now I hear 90 seconds a lot. This video, I think, is about 2 minutes long, and if you've not done one, you'd be surprised at how much effort it takes to make just a 2 minute long video, especially if you want to make a good one. But I would advise everybody to give it a go if you can. I don't have audio on that, Sean.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's possible or not. Maybe it's not possible.
It should be possible. I think it's, I loaded it into Fuse and then it doesn't seem to have been loaded. So maybe we'll continue on and I'll see if I can reload it and we can come
back. Okay, that's fine, thanks. Yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the video. I don't know about the level of skills that all of you have, if you've ever tried something like this before, but, you know, like everything else, video production software, video editing software is getting easier to use and cheaper all the time. I've got some free stuff. I would say ask, you know, if you've got a 15-year-old in your life, ask them. They'll know exactly how to help you start video editing. It turns out to be a lot easier than it looks, and I really enjoyed learning how to do this. So I use something called Final Cut Pro, but there are cheaper ones out there that you can find. It's really important to think about audio. I didn't realize this when I started making the video, but audio is so important. We tend to think that it's all about the visuals, but if you can't hear or understand what someone's saying, or if there's an annoying buzz, it's really hard to edit that out, and it's very difficult to fix bad audio in the editing process. So it's really worthwhile to even ask people to go to Radio Shack and get the $7 microphone, because it will improve your video quality vastly, even if you only have one for your whole organization. You did, Denise. Thank you. Most of this video I made over Skype. I did Skype interviews with a bunch of class conversations people, and I got a free Skype recorder. I downloaded it, and the video quality is not fantastic, but it was good enough. It was good enough to make something. Because, as I say, I live in Wales. I don't have the opportunity to go and interview people in real life, and Skype actually worked for that. And I want to say a little bit about my content process. When I started working with Dorothy and Denise, as I was saying before, they had a wonderful grasp of class and class conversations and how they built this project and what classism is. And I really respected that. And at the same time, I felt like it was, they had an intellectual grasp of it, which was very impressive. But I wanted to find this emotional pitch. I wanted to find a way to tell the story, as a human story about people in churches not feeling welcome, about people struggling to feel part of our UU movement. And so it took a while to find that story, but I wanted the story to be the heart of the video. So I ended up conducting these Skype interviews with a bunch of people. I mean, I spent a long time sort of looking for that story, and I interviewed 4 or 5 different people, hoping they would tell me this compelling story. And it wasn't until maybe, I don't know how far I got into it, but most of the video is from the perspective of Kelly, who's a ministerial intern. Is she still a ministry student? She may have graduated by now.
She actually passed whatever it is she needed to pass. So, but she's not. She's still a student.
Because she actually told this story of that I was looking for, of somebody who was not upper middle class coming into a UU church and feeling like she had to pass, and she was able to convey that in emotional language, and I thought that was really brave. And that then we built the video around her telling that story, and I think it came off as engaging. And then, of course, we added theological angles to it. People were talking about social justice and how class is so much about oppression, and how together we can build this great social justice coalition around class. So we added, the theological angle and all the other arguments that came in, but the first step in was this emotional engagement, and then we added other layers on top, and I think it works. I just wanted to make a little bit of an ad after that. And so in addition to these interviews, I wove in there some images on top of that. So the whole thing isn't just a talking head. There are images of UU churches that come onto the screen and float off, and what are called Ken Burns effects, just to make it a little bit more visually interesting. And then, of course, we added music, and there was a couple of graphics, and just to make it look a little bit more professional. And so if you get a chance to look at the video, you can see that. And those things are not as hard to do as you might think. So after that, it just brings us to the last slide, which is just in general lessons learned from the process that we have, and the things that we wanted to convey to other people coming up with Faithify bids. And some of these are Denise's, so you want to go ahead, and Denise, and talk about the campaign mode and timing.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So this all seems very impressive and very public relations oriented. And if you're a small organization and you don't have a professional PR person, are you expected to do it on your own, or do you get free consultation from Faithify, or how does that work? I mean, I was thinking I was going to do this myself. There's no way I could do this. So how does a small organization participate in this campaign effectively without a PR person?
So from our end, and I think Denise and Susanne will probably jump in, we think a lot of this is pretty manageable in terms of not all programs or projects have a video. If you can get a good image that represents what your project embodies, that'll work. If you're able to think about why, what's the story, what are you inviting people to contribute, why should they contribute? What is the impact on our UU movement in the world? And what does it mean to become a part of it? As long as you have those elements of the story and you're able to leverage the network that you already have. Right. I can't tell you the amount of times that we've had people, 5 or 6 days before their project ends, and they are furiously emailing us saying, can we extend the deadline, the amount of time we have? We're not going to make our goal. And we say, well, firstly, have you asked your friends and family to support you? Usually the answer is no. And then we say, have you told your supporters that this is the last time that they're going to be able to support you? And usually they go, no, I'm so wrapped up in the campaign that I didn't realize that other people may not be focusing on Faithify every day. So there's a lot of really manageable things that you can do. Class Conversations, I think, is just one of the best examples of kind of hitting a lot of those all at once.
Right. Honestly, I'm feeling intimidated by the process, and I've been involved in other campaigns. We did Giving Tuesday, and it was a miserable. It just did nothing. I talked to everyone. I said, look, it really takes 6 months and a lot of planning and a lot of effort to do Giving Tuesday. Well, I said, well, let's give it a shot. So we gave it a shot. We put up something on the web, and we got nothing. And we did an eBay campaign, and we did that, and the same thing. We got $800 for a lot of effort. So I'm just feeling intimidated by this.
Well, can we put up that last slide? Because I do want to say to you, we are not a large organization. You talk about a small organization. I mean, it was Dorothy and I, and then Betsy came into it, and then we, little by little, put together a steering committee. put together an advisory group. But we are by no means, I mean, I was up till like 4 o'clock in the morning working on some
But we
UU
would need
class
a Betsy. How do
conversation
we
stuff.
how do we get a Betsy, to help us?
No, this is Susanne. Betsy is the other person who helped us start the organization.
Oh, okay.
So there were three of us who were founders, co-founders. And then we started talking to people at UUA. We started talking to UUs that we know. And that's how we learned about Susanne.
Susanne. I mean, how do we get a
Yeah,
Susanne? Because that's the question.
I'm saying we talked to a lot of people that we knew. We talked to folks at the UUA.
Mm-hmm.
We talked to folks at other UU organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And our sponsor is my congregation, UU Framingham. We talk to people, we talk to kind of everybody we know. And as Sean's saying, I mean, part of it is really thinking ahead of time. That's when I say thinking campaign mode. Like timing really counts. When you were talking about Giving Tuesday, we did Giving
Mm-hmm.
Tuesday, got nothing. And I knew at the time, I said, Giving Tuesday is not a great idea for us because everybody's out there. So in terms of timing, you've got to think about who are the people you're trying to reach and when are they going to be free. We had actually thought about doing our Faithify campaign in January. And we thought that's a really bad idea because congregations are asking folks to pledge. So we looked at the UU calendar year and thought, this is the best time for us to do this. And we went for the maximum amount of days because we also knew we were going to be going through the holiday season when people are maxed out for giving for organizations that they've been giving to for a very long time. So I mean, really, I can't say enough. Think about getting support before you even start. You got to know who you're going after and how you're going after them. So as Sean had said, I mean, we have a little newsletter. We don't have a whole lot of folks who get our newsletter, and we do have a Facebook page. We do have a Twitter account. There again are very small. The number of followers are teeny compared to like a class action that helped to start us. They've got thousands. We've got a couple hundred. But we used every means we had to let people know before the campaign started that we were doing this. And we got a lot of support from, I mean, Susanne did a lot of this work, but we did a lot of the work, and some of our supporters helped to write things, helped to come up with photos. Kelly was fabulous at getting endorsements. I didn't have time to deal with that. So we got as many people on board before we started, and everybody had a small job to do.
Okay, thank you.
So I want to say that, and even thinking about prearranging the gifts, I wasn't kidding when I said we had a couple of folks that we talked to who agreed they would give a large sum at the beginning, and somebody who else would give a small sum because for class conversations we wanted to show that people could give at all levels. But we had talked to folks, almost like you could say you sort of seeded people ahead of time so that you had beginning folks, middle folks, end folks to keep that momentum going, and kept sending out information throughout. I mean, that's a lot of it, is just continuing to be in conversation with folks. We actually even wrote up a little bit of text and asked our advisory group people and our steering committee members to put it on their own Facebook pages, put it in their own Twitter accounts, and gave them text that hardly anybody used, but by just writing a couple of sentences that we took from the Faithify page, that gave people motivation to actually do something.
And are there guidelines available, like written, like for what kinds of things that you're talking about?
Yeah,
So
one thing I haven't mentioned is that there's the Faithify resources themselves are fantastic. If you go to the Faithify website, there's tons of stuff, and then they recommend other stuff on Kickstarter and all these videos. There's a whole library about how to do this on the Faithify website. And again, the Faithify staff were amazing. And we found that we could upload drafts of our bid up to the Faithify website, then we could all look at it. Then the Faithify staff were looking at it and giving us advice and feedback. And when we had technical glitches, this won't upload, that version doesn't, they would fix it for us.
Okay.
So there's a lot of help out there.
Okay, thank you.
So we're at our official end time. So I want to let Denise and Susanne say anything that they feel like is most important that they didn't get to, or just underscore one of their points so that we can all kind of move forward. Is there anything else you want to share?
For me, I can't say enough, plan. I mean, months before you want to do this, start planning it, start writing text, start thinking about images. And let Susanne talk a little bit more about that piece, but just the planning piece, the strategizing is so key.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I would say, invest in video, invest in graphics. Again, these are things that you can use throughout your PR. They're not just for Faithify. So you're building your own PR library of things you can use, these endorsements and photos and video. And again, they don't cost much. They really don't. I mean, I think we spent $500 and we made $5,000. In the long run, it was a really good investment for Class Conversations.
Great. So Class Conversations, just some perspective, 82 people came together to fund their Faithify campaign. Their goal was 4,000. They made a little bit more than that. So it's kind of humbling to think that 82 people could come together and fund this amazing project. So I want to thank Susanne and Denise for joining us. If you have questions, feel free to send them to me, and my email I'll put in the chat is sean@faithify.org. Denise and Susanne may be open to answering your questions if you have some. I'll let them decide if that's something that they want to do. I would also commend Susanne her How to Write for the Web. We watched it at the New England region, and it was very useful for us. And she just put a link in the chat. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Class Conversations. And we look forward to seeing you all in Faithify at some point.